Some interesting comments from Elizabeth Warren recently, sort of grilling Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. And as you guys know, some of the backdrop here is, of course, that because Washington is unwilling to act with regard to inflation, food prices, gas prices in particular, they've punted this thing to the Fed. As we've gone over a lot, the Fed is very limited in what they can do. Basically, what they can do is trigger a recession. I mean, that's effectively, they're openly admitting we got to get unemployment up, we got to get wages down. So the one thing that Washington has landed on to do to deal with what is, mostly a supply chain driven inflation crisis is to hurt you and your pocketbook. So Elizabeth Warren, I think, here does a very effective job of drawing out that reality and what the Fed actions can do and what they cannot do. Let's take a listen to that.
Chair Powell, will gas prices go down as a result of your interest rate increase?
I would not think so, no.
Okay. That matters because gas prices are one of the single biggest drivers of inflation. Energy prices overall drove a third of the inflation last month, but the Fed's tools, as you say, have no impact here. So let's look at another necessity, food. Price of groceries is up nearly 12% this year. Americans feel the pinch. No matter how much groceries cost, people still got to eat. Chair Powell, will the Fed's interest rate increases bring food prices down for families?
No, I wouldn't say so, no.
Okay. So a Fed increase won't bring down these prices.
So she goes on to press him on what will it do? And of course, the answer is spike unemployment, so cause you to lose your job, cause your wages to go down, and potentially trigger a recession. So you can't get gas prices under control. You can't get food prices under control. This is what you can do. And so, Saagar, I was looking at some polling that was being passed around about how Biden's approval rating with young people is now at 25%. And you think about it, you just step back and you're like, yeah, their policy with regards to gas prices is literally to increase them through the Russian oil ban, as we covered earlier, and to lean on the Fed to effectively trigger a recession. That's their policy. So it's a miracle anyone approves of what they're ultimately doing here.
Yeah, and look, Powell destroyed so many of these talking points, by Biden. He was like, no, it's not going to have any effect on food. No, it's not going to have any effect on gas. They were like, what about inflation? Is that a result of Putin? He's like, we had high inflation before the Russian invasion. So but he is doing all he can. He has only control over interest rates.
Yeah.
It's the president who has control over fiscal policy and other policy that actually do something about this inflation, some of which he refuses to do other than a stupid-ass gas tax holiday, which won't even happen. So consider that. At the same time, here's what the elites want to do. They basically want to destroy the U.S. economy in order to bring inflation under control. Let's throw this on the screen. Here's what Larry Summers is saying. And he's just saying the quiet part out loud. I don't want to target him specifically because this is what they all secretly believe. We need 5 years at 6% unemployment or 1 year at 10% unemployment. Great recession level unemployment in order to bring inflation under control. And you know what? He's not wrong. He is not wrong that in the current toolkit, with considering that the Fed was the only policy instrument, that actually is the only way in order to do that. The problem is that 3% unemployment we're at now to 6% is, tens of millions of people in this country. 10% unemployment, I can't even begin to describe our current economic condition and what that would mean for millions of not only workers, but their families and their dependents. People forget the fallout from the Great Recession. A lot of people just never went back to work. A lot of people had to drop out of the labor force, or they had to find underemployment, cash employment, or working 2 jobs, lost a lot of benefits, lost their house, bottom fell out of the retirement portfolio, underemployed up until the day that they could finally hit Social Security earlier. You think that's not going to happen at 5 years at 6% unemployment? Millions would drop out of the workforce. Millions of people would opt for early retirement and near poverty wages. And by the way, it's not like the price of gas would go down either.
Right.
To the extent that gas drops, it'll drop to maybe $4, and that would not be based on supply, which is what we need to deal with. It would be based on the fact that people are too poor to drive.
Right.
I don't want to live in that country.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is the thing too, is that even if the Fed triggers a recession and causes 10% unemployment, it's not clear that their actions alone will actually get inflation under control. I mean, Powell is admitting it there, like, nah, this isn't going to really deal with gas or food prices, which are the most painful parts of inflation for most people. But something that Skanda has been writing about, and also that Dave and Dan has been writing about, is it's not just that the Fed will crush demand, and by crush demand, that means hurt you, right? Depress your wages, your ability to spend money. So your wages will be hit, you may lose your job, destroy your ability to buy, all those things, right? So not only will the Fed's action do that, but it's actually not true that the Fed won't do anything on supply. Hiking interest rates will actually hurt supply because you will have some effects of less investment, and that means, you know, less building, less houses being constructed, these sorts of things that, so, you know, if inflation is a mismatch between supply and demand, you're crushing demand, yes, but you're also going to cause some issues on the supply side, which could exacerbate the problem. So it's not even clear that the Fed's actions alone, without legislative action, without our government actually functioning, and without, you know, Biden stop his idiotic policy with regard to Russia also, which is exacerbating the situation, they could actually make things worse. And this is something that David Dan has been writing over at the American Prospect. We can put this tear sheet up on the screen, sort of drawing this out. And he says the Fed's crushing investment right when we need it. He writes the Fed strategy might not cure the disease. It's hard to attribute inflation entirely to an economy running hot when there hasn't been any economic stimulus in 15 months. Fiscal policy has now turned sharply negative. What looks to be the greater problem is a simple shortage in physical capacity to sustain a decent standard of living. The main pockets of inflation right now are in fuel, which is rising because of supply shocks from Ukraine, a bottleneck in refining capacity, food, also stunted due to war, and housing, damaged by a decade of underbuilding. Investment is needed to deal with all of these categories, but thanks to the Fed, investment is now harder to do. Indeed, researchers from the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco recently concluded that problems other than demand account for about 2/3 of current inflation. And the only tool we are using is targeting demand, again, the thing that hurts you, when that is not even close to the majority of what's going on here.
Well, David is right. I mean, we have to transform the American economy and the American stock market. We have to build more warehouse space in order to be more comfortable with inventory. We need more manufacturing capacity here in the U.S. so that we don't rely on globalized, just-in-time delivery. We need the ability in order to build resilience into the economy, and that costs money, and that means investment dollars. When you don't invest and you don't have the capital to borrow, well, you're going to have to cut cost. And when you cut cost, you both cut investments and you cut jobs. And then when demand goes down, you have further revenue that's coming in the door, which affects your ability to borrow. So you're only become leaner, and shareholderism means that we're going to try and squeeze even more values out of the stock. The best way to do so is what? Cut even more jobs, cut more investment. So at the time when America needs investment more than ever, we are effectively choosing the opposite. And I think we should all take Chairman Powell's words to heart, which is he is admitting to us it will not affect either of the prices.
That's right. And the sad thing is we had a lot of years at 0% interest rates to do this investment. And instead, companies, you know, bought back their own stock and issued dividends, and they didn't do the investment. The federal government completely hamstrung. They didn't do the investment. So that's the other piece, is we had this window of a decade to set ourselves up for the future so that, you know, and reshore capacity, all of those things, and we lost it. So it is, guys, I really think it's going to be ugly. I'm very concerned about where we're headed right now.
I think it's going to be bad, unfortunately, as well.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.